Hello, so I'm Richard Orban. I'm a licensing and ventures manager in Oxford. What I do during my day job is I make the University of Oxford's inventions a reality. So, Albus Health were nominated because as participants in the Oxford Biodesign Programme, they've taken a needs-based approach to innovation. They had to undertake a process of needs analysis, ideation, tech development, and validation before spinning out from university. So between 2016 and now, we have a team that have transitioned from being strangers to a deep tech company with market validation in just 3 years. And why I think they should win this competition is because based on my experience of the Oxford ecosystem, which has created more than 200 companies and 2 billion investment, this is unprecedented. Strangers do not build tech companies, they get purchase orders in less than 3 years. Thank you.
Breaking the wall of asthma suffering. Mikesh Udani, Albus Health.
Hello, everyone. As you might have noticed from the audio recording, unfortunately, Mikesh couldn't make it due to unexpected personal circumstances. But on his place, my name's William. I'm the co-founder and medical director of Albus Health, and I'm very excited to speak to you today about our mission to break down the wall of asthma suffering. And asthma is one of the most common respiratory conditions worldwide, with more than 300 million adults and children suffering from it. And of these, more than 150 million suffer at least one potentially life-threatening asthma attack where they struggle to breathe, while some suffer more than 6. And these lead to hundreds of thousands of hospital admissions and emergency room visits, costing in the order of billions across Europe, America, and of course beyond, with the global prevalence of asthma rapidly increasing, set to become more than 400 million in the next 6 years. So despite spending this much money, why are people still going through such devastation? And the core of the problem is the failure to identify early warning signs. And this was all too clear from my own experiences working as a doctor in the emergency room, frustratingly clear when people had been getting worse, sometimes for days, sometimes even weeks, without quite realizing the severity. And this is shown by the National Review of Asthma Deaths in the UK, which found that in almost half of people who died due to asthma attacks, they died before the ambulance had time to arrive. That's the scale of late recognition that goes on. There are existing and emerging solutions, but they simply do not work. On one hand, you have various different breathing tests that you blow into each day. On the other, symptom diaries, apps, smartphone add-ons. But they all rely on patients changing their behavior, remembering to do something every day for a chronic condition. And even when they do use it, it's often subjective and limited by technique, which is a particular problem for the millions of children and the elderly who suffer from asthma. And this isn't just a problem in asthma clinical care, but also a significant one in clinical and pharmaceutical research, where there is a lack of objective and reliable tools to evidence new treatment studies. Our solution at Albus Health completely overcomes these limitations, comprising 3 elements: monitoring, assessment, and intervention. First of all, we've developed a home monitoring device, a bedside device that's fully non-contact and automated, that will capture symptoms and signs relating to your condition for as long as required without you having to do anything. This is then combined with information from the clinicians, with the environment, into machine learning algorithms that assess a personalized baseline for each individual and detect subtle changes that may not be perceived. And when the risk is significant, it can be fed back to the patient, to the carers, to the clinicians, in order to prevent the severe attack from happening. And our market entry strategy directly aligns with these 3 stages of development. First of all, the monitoring device we've developed, Albus Home RD Research Device, is targeted in a B2B model for pharmaceutical and clinical research trials in order to improve the efficiency and yield of clinical trials, and not just for asthma, but across the spectrum of respiratory conditions. Our second product would then incorporate the clinical assessment package into the monitoring, and this would be in a B2B2C model for starting with parents of children with asthma, who are always reporting the frustrations and the fears they have when their child is struggling to really breathe at home. And finally, adding in the clinical intervention element would allow reducing of preventable healthcare visits and costs to the benefit of large insurance providers, healthcare providers, systems, and of course, ultimately the patient as well. In the 2 years since we incorporated as a company and 3 years since the university, We started with this mission, but have had significant traction. We have built a fantastic multidisciplinary team with leading technical expertise, as well as world-leading clinical opinion leaders in respiratory medicine and research, and commercial expertise of those who've entered the healthcare market and have scaled successfully. We've been very fortunate to receive the support and funding from many organizations, some of which are shown here, including competitively awarded grant funding and private investments. And we're also very excited to share that in the past few months we've received our first client order from one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the respiratory space to use our monitoring devices in one of their clinical studies. And we've come together with diverse skills, but with a unified mission of breaking down this wall of asthma suffering, and to help build a world where no one needs to be hospitalized for asthma, let alone die from it. Thank you very much.